Good afternoon, Louisiana, and welcome to Odds and Ends for November 15th. It's another fabulous Monday. We had a not-so-fabulous weekend of football in Louisiana this weekend. Not so fabulous from the betting angle either, if we're being honest, guys. It was pretty rough out there.
Yeah, I'm in on so many angles. I had a good week in some places, terrible week in others. Spread myself too thin.
That way you can never truly have a good week anytime, right?
You can't have a bad week either.
Well, that's true. I guess. Except if you listen to Jim's podcast, Attitude, which came out with a new episode this morning, you'll know that, I mean, you didn't have a very good weekend because the Saints ruined it for you.
It was pretty bad. I was pretty, it's a lot different. I don't know if I liked it more when I was covering the team, and you really – it's very easy to suppress your emotions when you're covering the team because it's business and you're going on your thing and you're in the press box and you can't show emotion. And I kind of missed those days yesterday because I was pretty ticked off, I got to say.
I mean, I just tend to think about that way myself anyway, because I've been in this business for long enough to where it just isn't part of it for me anymore. But
well, so have I. But there's certain times when I just can't get away from just things. When you see a game like that we saw yesterday, and that was completely thrown away in every aspect. You play that game 10 times and take just a couple of those things out, and the Saints win it most of the time. So it's just a weird situation.
Yeah, and having said that, if they win those games and you're a fan, you feel fantastic. And those of us who kind of take our emotion out of it don't get that good feeling. So, it's sort of a give or take, but it was just a weird weekend. The last Saints said you got to live by the Saints and die by the Saints. And he also said we need a quarterback change, which we are going to talk about. I know, Jim, we're going to get into that. Whether a quarterback change should be in the offing for the Saints as early as this next weekend against Philadelphia, or if they should stick with Trevor Simeon. So first of all, a quick shout out to the Monday night game tonight. It's a pretty good one, at least on paper, Rams and 49ers. The Niners are pretty much backs against the wall. They're going to have to either run the table or go 7-2, 8-1 the rest of the way to make the playoffs, I think. And it's got to start here. The Rams are in town. They're 3.5-point favorites. The Rams debut of Odell Beckham Jr. and of Von Miller, supposedly, say the reports that they're both going to make their Rams debuts tonight. So that'll be interesting. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about this on paper. It seems like the Rams ought to be favored by more than 3.5, but then they should have beat the Titans last week too. You never quite know what you're going to get out of those guys.
Well, for me, if I were just a casual bettor, I agree with you, but the Sharks know something we don't because they're all over the 49ers tonight, and which is hence why I was on the 49ers from the beginning. It's just one of those games where I think the Rams need a little bit more time to gel with all the changes that they made. I still think they're going to end up being the best team in the NFC. Aren't right now, but I think they're just kind of a team in transition that they needed another couple of weeks, but the Niners are desperate. The Rams aren't so desperate. Look, the Niners still haven't won at home. It's do or die for them tonight, and if they have any ounce of whatever, they're going to have to give it tonight, and I think they will.
Although the Rams, you say they're not really desperate, but this is a chance they win this game. Do they catch the Cardinals in the NFC West if they win this game, or they're still a half a game behind? They basically would even it up with Arizona. And that division title, obviously, very important because it means you're at home. You have a chance for the number one seed and the bye, all of those things. But you're right. And they're a team in transition still. There's still half a season to go. I'm also intrigued. Let's bring in our producer, Devin Jackson, here, too. The total in this game is 50.5, which seems high to me. I don't like it. Just doesn't seem like the type of game where both teams are going to get deep into the 20s, Devin.
Yeah, 49ers offense have been pretty much up and down all season long. And The Rams defense has been solid. I know they struggled last week against the Titans, but generally speaking, I mean they're pretty much a bend don't break defense, and the 49ers haven't been incredibly explosive all season long, and they've been flip flopping quarterbacks back and forth with Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, and I know Garoppolo was hurt for a couple weeks, but they just haven't seemed to find a rhythm offensively. Maybe this is the game they do so. I mean these two teams know each other pretty well. I mean, they play each other twice a year. But I don't know. I don't see a high scoring affair in this one. I think it's a 27-20 type of game where I think the Rams kind of take control of this one early, but kind of coast to the finish line. I think both teams just want to get in this game, get the win, and get out. I don't expect this to be a high scoring one.
And I mean, you think about this, the 49ers, Colt McCoy and the Cardinals ran roughshod over them last week. And now we're thinking that Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp and the Rams are not going to beat them by more. It's just kind of a weird deal. But if there's anything the NFL teaches us every single week, yesterday included, it is that last week's results, really, you can't read a whole lot into them because things change every single week. And with that said, let's look at some of yesterday's results from the NFL. The first and foremost example there is the second item on the list. The Cowboys beat the Falcons 43-3. Last week, the Falcons looked downright competent in beating the Saints. I know the Saints helped out a little bit, but they still looked pretty good. They were in a playoff spot. The Cowboys got waxed by Denver and then turn around and it's 43-3. The Browns looked great last week. They go into New England and score a touchdown on their first drive and then get beat 45-0 the rest of the way. The Washington football team beats Tampa Bay by 10 points. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs look like the Kansas City Chiefs of old. Last week just doesn't seem to mean a whole lot when we look at some of these games, Jim.
Last week never means anything. I mean, that's why Las Vegas makes so much money. You have to take, when you're looking at NFL, when you're trying to pick NFL games and be consistently over 55%, you can't hardly put anything into last week. I mean, there are some instances where you can, but you just can't. I mean, it's a body of work. And, you look at a team like the Cowboys, of course, no one could have predicted that Tampa Bay was going to lose to Washington, but the Sharps were all over Washington when it came to the 9.5. You look at, like I said, the Cowboys, you knew they were going to come back big. The Falcons had spent all their energy in beating the Saints the past week. It was clearly going to be a flat spot. Did I expect 43-3? No, but I expected a big Cowboys win. To me, that was the easiest pick of the week. And then, and now going into next week, the Chiefs are going to play Dallas at home, and everyone's going to think the Chiefs are back. So a line that right now is 2, I bet goes up to 3. You just can't, when you're picking NFL games, you cannot just take last week's games and see, what did I see? That's what I'm going to bet on. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and you can read Jim's NFL picks every Wednesday morning on bet.NOLA.com. We also have a version of them in the Sunday paper. Of course, you pick it on the Tuesday line, so by Sunday it's not the same. But, that's an interesting one because the Sharps were also on Atlanta. That line dropped from 9 down to 7.5 Sunday morning. And, I'm looking at that going, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And, sure enough, now everything that could go wrong for the Falcons went wrong, but they still were never going to win. Okay, Titans Saints. Let's talk about it. It's what everybody wants to talk about. I know you talked about it at length. Listen to Datitude this morning. It's great with Jim and Jeff Duncan, and you guys go in depth in it. But sort of in a nutshell, Jim, summarize your take on this game, because your take was that yes, little things went wrong, extra points, penalties, the missed call by the officials that was horrendous. But ultimately, you went somewhere else with the lion's share of your blame for this one.
That's my lion's share of the blame of what's wrong with this team the past 2 weeks. Fans love to blame officials. Fans love to blame kickers. It's so easy to do that, right? But they don't want to blame the biggest problem of all, and that's Trevor Simeon. And he's clearly – sure, you could look at his numbers and say, okay, if you look at his numbers, he did okay. But 2 games in a row now, he's had to lead them to a comeback because of problems that he's caused. And this team has zero flow. They have no they did better when they had to start moving a little bit faster. But the first 2.5 quarters of the game, I saw nothing. And he seems to play with no emotion. He's just kind of there. He's not accurate. He doesn't make great reads. He's a 6'3" guy who lets the ball go at kind of shoulder length and it gets batted away. He holds on to the ball too long. So we could sit in here and talk about all the things I think are wrong about Trevor Simeon. And, there are a lot of people out there who just don't like Taysom Hill for some unknown reason. I've been getting kind of poked at all day but long by people who don't like Taysom Hill. And that's fine. I'm not a big Taysom fan, so I don't want it to come off that way. But we know what we have with Trevor Simeon. We've seen enough in 2 weeks to know that he cannot lead this team to do anything but be 8-9, 9-8 at best, and that's not good enough. And so, in my opinion, first of all, my opinion doesn't matter because Sean Payton's not going to make the switch because he's stubborn. But in my opinion, the change needs to be made because we know what we have in Trevor Simeon. And to me, the only way this team is going to do anything the rest of the year is to do it with Taysom Hill.
I'm going to push back on a couple of points. And now listen, I'm all for giving Taysom Hill a chance. That's not necessarily my problem. I'll push back, number one, just real briefly on the missed, the phantom roughing the passer call that takes an interception away from the Saints and effectively hands 7 points to the Titans. This was never going to be a high-scoring game. I know it was in the first half, and if the Titans don't get that touchdown, you don't know how they play in the second half. But this was never going to be a high-scoring game. And just giving one team 7 points is absolutely enormously huge in that game. It changes the win expectancy by a good 30, 40%. Not by 100%, but we're talking a big-time shift. And so if there's ever a time to blame the officials, obviously the NFC Championship trumps this by a bunch. But this was a pretty good time to say, if you don't call that call that all of us agree was a bad call, the Saints have a 30 to 40% chance better to win that game. And as it turned out, that probably would have been enough. The other place I'll push back is that I don't think Trevor Simeon's been bad. And I don't agree that he can only lead this team to an 8-9 season. Quite frankly, if his receivers can catch some passes last week, they beat the Falcons. And this week, if, again, the call and then the other inflection point in this game, Sean Payton, brilliant coach, completely screwed up by kicking the field goal on 4th and goal from the 1. Completely
100%.
Screwed it up. That is absolutely the wrong decision by analytics. It's the wrong decision by your gut. It's just wrong. I mean, even if you say, okay, we're going to kick the field goal over here and be safe and make this a one-possession game, even if things go absolutely well from that point on, which they did, the Saints got a stop, they went down and they scored a touchdown. Best case scenario, your game is on the line from the 2-yard line instead of the 1-yard line because the 2-point conversion's from the 2. So instead of choosing to have the game on the line from the 1-yard line, and by the way, if you make that 2-point conversion, you can now win it in regulation with a touchdown instead of just settling for overtime. And instead, you end up with the game on the line from the 2-yard line. Then, of course, they have the illegal shift, and it ends up being the 7-yard line. And just that is just to get to a tie with a minute and a half left to where Tennessee can either come down and win or you, best case scenario, you go to overtime. So I just don't understand what's going through Peyton's mind on that one. That one made no sense to me at all. But that's not Trevor Simeon's fault. Trevor Simeon was fine. I mean, how is it Trevor Simeon's fault that Sean Payton said, let's
go? Because for
let's
2.5 – no. That part's not Trevor Simeon's fault. The fault that's Trevor Simeon's was the 2.5 to almost 3 quarters before that put him in that position in the first place. And then
we think Taysom's going to be better? We think Taysom's
We don't know if Taysom's going to be better. We got to find out. I know Trevor Simeon is not the answer. So whether Taysom Hill is the answer or not, I don't know the answer to that. But I know who isn't the answer. And they are not going to win anything important with this guy at quarterback, period. And I agree with you about the 4th and 1 call 100%. I hate this analytics stuff. This stuff needs to end, percentages and all that stuff. Most head coaches don't, and the really good head coaches don't use these numbers.
They should. They should
not. Look what it's done to the Chargers. It killed the Chargers in at least 2 games this year. It's also killed the Ravens a couple of times because John Harbaugh loves those numbers. You don't go for 4th down on your own side of the field ever. I'm sorry, ever. I don't care unless I'm taking it back. If you're losing with 5 minutes left and you need to score a touchdown, then fine, and you don't have any timeouts left. But there are teams that are starting to use this analytic stuff, and this is a whole nother show, by the way. But teams are starting to use this analytic stuff at the most asinine times. And because we make it 58% of the time, we're going to go for it, 4th and 1, our own 42. Well, guess what happens if you don't get it? Not you do basically what that roughing the passer call did to the Saints yesterday. So, I mean, look, I'm still obviously agitated about this whole thing. And I agree the referee's call completely, you can call it a game-changing call. But at the same time, if it doesn't happen and Tennessee doesn't score, we have no idea how Tennessee is going to play defense in the second half. We have no idea if they're going to play a different kind of offense. It did not make a difference in the game as far as the Saints' ability to win the game. You cannot blame the ref for losing the football game.
How does it not make a difference? How does it not make a difference?
Because it doesn't make a difference because you still control your own destiny going into the second half. And you have to overcome these things. And winners don't make excuses. And you know what? Blaming a ref is making an excuse. And
I'm not the one playing the game.
It's different when it happens. You can do whatever you want. You can't. It's different when it happens in the fourth quarter than when it happens in the last minute of the first half. It wasn't like it turned your 13-point difference into 20 and you can't come back. It was a one touchdown game. The Saints had all the control of changing the game, and they made huge mistakes in the second half. Not just Trevor Simeon. I agree 100% with your 4th and 1 call. That made zero sense right there. You have to go for it right there. If you can't get 1 yard from the 1 yard line, I mean, if you can't get 1 yard and get a touchdown right there and change the course, because not only you talk about the Saints would have a chance to go and win the game, they get a 2-point conversion or go for 3 if they have to. Even if they don't get the 2-point conversion there, they still control their own destiny. You stop Tennessee. If you get the touchdown right there, you don't get the 2-point conversion. It's a 5-point game. You still come down and score a touchdown and win the game. And then an extra point doesn't even matter. So I agree wholeheartedly with that. But we cannot blame an official for something that happens in the first half. And you can go wham, wham, wham and cry all day long. But guess what? If you're going to do that, you're going to lose. And excuses are for losers.
Well, we're not the ones playing the game. So we can sit here and tell you how it affected the game. And I will tell you how it affected the game. It cost the Saints the game. Like just mathematically speaking, it cost them the game. Now, could they have overcome that? Sure, they could have, but their margin for error is not that good right now. Devin, you're going to have to talk some sanity into us right now. You've been quiet this whole time. One thing that it did do, Sean Payton's decision, is it allowed the Saints to cover the spread, I guess. I mean, if he goes for it there, they may not have covered the spread if they get stuck. What was your take, Devin, and talk some sanity into us?
See, I agree with a little bit of both of your points here, but to me, I think it comes down to I just don't think right now the way that the Saints are playing offense, it's sustainable. And I think you're going to have to make a decision here whether a road that you want to go down. You either going to go down a road with Taysom Hill and you have that added that he can run the football, that he can add another dimension to the offense, or you're just going to allow Trevor Simeon to basically play with practice squad receivers and have those type of results. I think either way, you're going to have disadvantages, but I think you have to figure out which path is, I guess, more not necessarily sustainable, but can win you games. And the Saints this season, when they won games, they've been able to control the football, run the football, be able to dominate the line of scrimmage. So I think a quarterback change is probably going to happen. I would think just because Trevor Simeon, like Jim said, we've seen what he can do. And while the blame shouldn't be placed on him, I think other factors as well, in terms of why the offense isn't running fluidly, why the Saints can't score until the fourth quarter. Because, I mean, this is now 2 games in a row where they had to come back from double-digit deficits. And you can point to the mistakes they've made offensively. You can point to, some of the decisions they've made, like last game, not going for on 4th and goal from the 1 yard line. But ultimately, I think you have to look at your roster and evaluate what you have. And I think the Saints are at a point where they need something, a playmaker at quarterback. They can't just have Trevor Simeon be the game manager for this team because they just don't have enough good weapons to do so. So I think, like I said, both of your points are sound. Obviously, the call definitely affected the game and gave Tennessee 7 points. But I mean, you can point to some other Saints mistakes that happened. Deontay Harris fumbled the opening kickoff of the third quarter. That was a big momentum shift as well that I think isn't being talked about enough. And then, just the Saints obviously missing extra points. That's a big thing everyone's talked about. But the Saints made mistakes on their own that caused this game to be the way it was, them being down double digits. So I think you're going to have to make some decisions. Sean Payne talked about after the game that they can't continue to keep going down the same path and expecting different results. So I think a quarterback change is going to happen. I don't think that's going to necessarily fix everything, but it seems like a lot of their mistakes right now are self-inflicted.
I will say that the comparison we're making, though, to remember, is not just Simeon versus Taysom. It is Simeon with Taysom as a weapon versus Taysom, right? I mean, if you put Taysom Hill in full-time quarterback, you lose him as a tight end / playmaker / goal line back, however you want to use him. So that's I think that's got to be part of the discussion too. I'm not saying it's not Taysom time, but if you have Simeon in there, you have one more weapon. You have Taysom. So let's kind of take this big picture. Let's go to the next slide.
Exactly. One quick thing before you go to the next, and I'll make it very brief. If you're not going, and we may not know, there may be more to Taysom. Dunk talked about this, and he's right. I mean, there may be more to Taysom's injury than we know, and the Saints just aren't being transparent. That's certainly possible. So maybe he's not capable of playing quarterback for an entire game. I get that. But I can tell you right now, and I know this is going to sound outrageous, and I don't care what it sounds like. I know what we have with Trevor Simeon, and I'd rather see Ian Book play. That's how bad it is.
It's not that bad.
It is
They
awful.
went to Nashville and darn near coulda, woulda, shoulda beat the best team in the AFC with Simeon at quarterback.
They did it with defense, and they did it with Mark Ingram. And Simeon, you cannot wait to the fourth quarter to play football. You have to have a faster pace. If they're going to use Simeon, they have to figure out a way to either go into some kind of 2-minute offense or get him to speed up, because he is completely nonchalant and this just whatever kind of guy. And he looks like he ought to be surfing in California and not playing quarterback for the New Orleans Saints.
Man, I don't understand the hate, man. I really don't.
It's not hate for him.
Is he going to be a Pro Bowler? He's not going to be a Pro Bowler. But you're talking about a guy.
4 teams already.
He went up there with Alvin Kamara hurt, Teron Armstead hurt, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson hurt. You're talking about a team that was basically playing its second team in key spots. And they went to Tennessee, and no, did he carry them? No, he didn't carry them or anything, but he played good enough for them to win the game if other mistakes weren't made. So, okay, big picture, this is where we're going with this. The odds right now at Caesar Sportsbook, the official odds provider of bet.NOLA.com and of odds and ends, will the Saints make the playoffs? The yes is still a slight favorite, -140. The no is +110. We'll give you the playoff picture there at the bottom. The wild card leader right now is the Rams. They'd be the number 5 seed. They're 7-2. Again, if they win tonight, they tie up Arizona. The NFC South leader is the Bucs. They're 6-3. So the Saints are 2 games behind the wild card leader, 1 game behind the Bucs. They're half a game ahead of Carolina for the last playoff spot. Should have had a little line there under Carolina. Then the Vikings and Falcons are another half game behind. Eagles and 49ers both a full game behind the Panthers. And again, 49ers, of course, play tonight. So give me your take, guys. Yes or no, given the landscape. I personally still think there's enough margin for error here to where the Saints can make it. They're obviously going to have to probably win this weekend to keep that, in my opinion. But tell me what y'all think.
You go first, Devin.
I think the Saints still make the playoffs.
Jim's got to clear his throat.
Yeah. I think the Saints still make the playoffs. I think their defense is gonna play well enough for them to still win games. I look at the rest of their schedule. I know they got a tough stretch coming up. Obviously, they're gonna play the Eagles, who are kind of fighting for their playoff lives this weekend, and then obviously the Bills on Thanksgiving night. But I think the Saints will do enough to win. I think if they get to 9 or 10 wins, they'll get in the playoffs.
All right, Jim.
I'm gonna say yes, because I think that at some point in the near future, and not just with Simeon, I think that Sean Payton is going to realize. I mean, he realizes already, but Sean Payton is going to make changes that need to be made along whatever. I think they'll win 9 games, and I think this year 9 games is going to be good enough to get in. They'll find a way to get in. In fact, honestly, 8 games might be good enough to get in with this 7th playoff spot and the big bunch of mediocre teams that are in there, and the fact that the Saints have beaten Green Bay and Tampa Bay. And look, I still think they're going to pull out some weird games here and there. I think they have a chance to beat Dallas. But what worries me about this week in particular, and if you do end up going on a 3-game losing streak, it kind of changes the outlook of a team, just their philosophical, emotional, I guess, outlook. So this week kind of worries me, and it really worries me that the line went from -1 Sunday morning to +1.5 Sunday night. So I know that we changed lines based on what happened in games, but it also probably means that some big money came in on the Eagles. So and where big money goes, it kind of makes me a little nervous. But I think they'll make it.
The Eagles have had sharps on them for several weeks in a row now, and they've been playing better.
Yeah, and I don't get that. And I have been hearing, it's funny, these shows that I listen to, there are plenty of sharps that just love the Eagles. But these same sharps love the Chargers too. And I don't think the Chargers are that great. So I don't kind of get all that love. But anyway, I think they'll make it some kind of way. But again, this is the kind of team that's going to be a 6 or a 7 seed and go on the road and have to play the Rams, or they're going to have to play, I don't know, Green Bay will probably get the Tampa Bay, something like that, and they'll be going early. But what all this does, though, it shows, and we talked about this on Datitude, it shows that in the offseason, you have to have seasons like this. In the offseason, if it's not going to be Jameis, the Saints have to go out and get a real quarterback, regardless. I mean, no matter what happens, I think Sean Payton will see that, and it will at least force their hand to do that, something they haven't been willing to do for a while.
All right. If you want to listen to more discussion about Saints, Titans, and where the Saints go from here, the Datitude podcast, a full, almost 90 minutes, I think, of discussion about that
90
game.
Minutes,
there's a lot there. So if you check that out on bet.nola.com or Datitude on any major podcast subscriber if you want more. I do want to share some of the comments we've gotten. T. Hawkington talking about the bad call. That cost him the game. Dude, you sound cray-cray. That's you, Jim. That's Jim Cray-Cray Dairy.
They can hate on me all they want.
Beth says Taysom time for sure. That kind of seems like the consensus right now. The last Saint, Trevor Simeon's a journeyman QB. Defense can only do so much. Game management only works if Michael Thomas is here. Interesting take there. Again, I get that argument, but at the same time, Trevor, if they make some extra points or Sean Payton makes the right decision on 4th and goal, Trevor Simeon's game management worked yesterday. It did. They should have won that game.
If they won the game, I wouldn't feel any different. I wouldn't feel 1 ounce different than I feel right now. Had he completed that pass to Ingram and they tie the game and go in overtime win the game, I wouldn't feel any different than I promise you. I'm not just saying it. I wouldn't be as angry probably and perturbed, I guess is the right word. But I wouldn't feel any differently. He's not a quarterback that's going to lead this team to anything. And I'm not gonna be a dead horse.
It'll be interesting. I mean, I think at some point they will give Taysom an opportunity. Again, Taysom's not a dynamic passing quarterback either. He's got a good arm, but he has shown that he can't run real complicated route trees, things like that. We'll see how it goes. I do think they'll give him a chance. Yeah, I mean that's the point though, is that this team has a good enough nucleus around the quarterback to where they don't need a Pro Bowler there.
We need to stop blaming the receivers, by the way. If you look at the statistics and the drop numbers, they're not as bad as everybody thinks they are. Duncan talked about that today. And sure, they're dropping balls that are like behind them and maybe the great, the top 20% receivers catch. They're not making those catches, but Kevin White's not going to make those catches. Traquan I thought has played very well since the Seattle game. Trotman needs to stop jumping off sides. That's a whole nother story that we never got to. But,
T says, can't understand not having Taysom in on the 2-point conversions in both games. He actually was in there, I believe, the end of the game and this time. And then when they got the penalty, they took him out when they were back on the 7. And then Trace says, give Ian Book a shot. I don't think he would. I think if he's not even on the active roster, guys. I don't think he's ready.
He was yesterday, I believe.
Well, okay. Well, yeah, but that was the first time. So maybe he was against the Tennessee.
I think he's going to have to be. On all seriousness,
well, if somebody gets hurt, listen. If somebody gets hurt, he is going to be the guy. So
he'll be on the active roster the rest of the year, I would imagine, with Jameis being out. And I'm going to tell you this right now, and I'm not kidding. If they lose the next 3 games, You're going to see Ian Book.
You might as well.
You can bet on it.
Hey, that's a great segue because at that point you're in LSU territory where you don't have a whole lot to lose at this point, and you're going to play Garrett Nussmeier. Hell, see what you got.
But they're not going to. They announced it today.
We're going to go into college football. LSU took Arkansas to overtime, ultimately didn't have enough offense. They threw the interception on their possession in overtime, and the Razorbacks won. That game was a push on the line because it was Arkansas by 3. Finally, somebody beat Oklahoma. I mean, they've been asking for it all year long for somebody to knock them off, and Baylor finally got the job done. Michigan stays alive in the national title hunt. Georgia is basically in the playoff at this point. There's almost no way they can miss it, even if they were to lose a game at some point. They just can't lose both. They play an FCS team this week. They just can't lose to both Georgia Tech and Alabama in the SEC championship game. But they could even lose one of those and still get in. They're not losing to Georgia Tech.
Right.
Ohio State's still in the race, and Texas A&M is out of the race. Ole Miss beats them 29-19 in Oxford on Saturday night. Devin, when you look at this list, what sticks out to you?
Honestly, none of them really stick out. I think, Oklahoma was bound to lose at some point because they were just playing a dangerous way of football, barely escaping so many games. You can only win by so much in college football until you're finally exposed. So I'm not super surprised by anything really on the list. I guess the thing I'm most surprised about is LSU not putting back in Max Johnson on Saturday, even with everything that was happening in that game. I understand LSU was pretty much within striking distance the entire game, but Nussmeier struggled, and they just allowed him to struggle, and they said they were going to run 2 quarterback system. They basically went with Nussmeier after the second or third possession. So I guess I was more surprised about the fact that LSU didn't really do a 2 quarterback system on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it was all Nussmeier, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the kid had played okay. I mean, if either one of those guys really are the LSU quarterback going into next year with recruiting the way that it is, I don't know. I mean, neither one of them thrills me, to be honest. And I really had high hopes for Max Johnson, but he has not played up to what I thought he was going to be. And Nussmeier, he's a freshman. He played okay, and I thought LSU played okay. I thought their defense played better than probably most people expected them to. And I didn't think that was going to be as low scoring a game as it was. But look, maybe it's for the best. I mean, LSU is not going to beat Texas A&M. They're not going to a bowl game. I said this 5 weeks ago. And quite frankly, let's just let this saga end. So maybe it's for the best.
It would be awkward. You make a bowl game and Ed Ogeron is stepping out at the end of the season, sometime between the A&M game, possibly even before, but probably after the A&M game and before the bowl game. You're going to name a new coach. We've all seen teams in those situations before. It's awkward anyway, but I think it'd be especially awkward if Ogeron was still around coaching the bowl game. So you're right. Maybe it's for the best. They lost this game, and they have ULM this weekend, probably get win number 5, and that would have been win number 6 if you find a way to win this one. But instead, you'll go into the A&M weekend needing that 6th win. Probably not going to get it. Jimbo Fisher today, by the way, speaking of who the next coach will be, came out, and even though he has been repeatedly connected to the LSU job, came out again and said, guys, no, I'm not leaving A&M. I have a great recruiting class. He even said, I'm quoting here, he said, I would be a very dumb person if I recruited this class and then left to go over there and had to face these guys every year. So this is great because either Jimbo stays at A&M or we get to call him a dumb person for the rest of eternity by his own command.
I don't think Jimbo's real smart anyway. So,
I mean, his name's Jimbo, for God's sake.
Yeah, exactly. I never thought it was going to be Jimbo Fisher. I mean, he's not a guy that I think they would want to come back here. I think it's going to be a Mel Tucker, Lincoln Riley, James Franklin.
Yeah. And any of those, by the way, I think would be good hires, especially if you could get Lincoln Riley or James Franklin, who have proven that they can win year in and year out at a big program. So it's interesting. College football championship odds. The field got paired a little bit this week. We lost Texas A&M. Really didn't have a chance. Didn't have room on here to put Notre Dame. They're at 100-1. So we went up to 80-1. Notre Dame's problem is their head-to-head loss to Cincinnati. So if you're not going to let Cincinnati in, how can you let Notre Dame in? That's even though the Irish are 9-1, that's really their problem. But Georgia continues to be the odds-on favorite here. They're minus 120. Alabama, Ohio State, clearly the only two that anybody expects to have a chance against Georgia. Any long shots you guys like here? I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say anybody outside of that top three has a chance.
Devin,
I'm
you're
looking
the
at
college football expert.
Yeah, I'm looking at this list. I don't love any of these teams, to be honest. I don't. If I had to choose one, maybe Michigan, because their defense is just outstanding. But every other team has flaws. I mean, Oklahoma's offense just disappeared on Saturday. Cincinnati, they can't beat anybody by more than a couple scores anymore, even though they come in as these double-digit favorites. And I mean, you look at Oklahoma State and Michigan State; they're both inconsistent teams. I would say Michigan, I guess, but that's going to get sorted out in the next few weeks anyway, because they have to play Ohio State next weekend. So I would say Michigan for now if I had to choose, but I don't feel confident about any of these teams.
I think there's decent value in Michigan at 40-1. The only problem is you say decent value, and then in reality, is it actually going to happen? You're talking about having to beat Ohio State, having to win the Big Ten championship game, then having to beat Georgia and whoever else in the college football playoff. Probably not.
I made I think 7 weeks ago, I made my biggest non-Super Bowl bet ever on Georgia's future, plus 150. To me, it was the easiest bet I've seen in forever. I mean, it may be the easiest bet I've ever made, and I'll stand by it. There is nobody. You could give me 700, plus 700 in Alabama, and like plus 1,200 on Ohio State, and I still wouldn't bet them. I wouldn't waste my money. It wouldn't be even worth $10. I did put I put $10 on Cincinnati just for a goof a few weeks ago, just in case some kind of miracle happened, just for a goof. I'd rather waste $10 on Cincinnati than waste $10 on two teams that I know can't beat Georgia, and I know Alabama and Ohio State can't beat Georgia.
Cincinnati.
But here's one thing, Zach. I want to ask you: are you finally giving up the go? Are you finally seeing the light that this is all about money, and they're just not going to let Cincinnati in?
Oh, actually, two things. Number one, I'm less confident in Cincinnati than I was a month ago because they honestly just have not been playing very well since that win in South Bend. Even last week in South Florida, they won easily enough, but it was just kind of like they had like a 31-7 lead and couldn't put the game away. It's one of my big bucks picks is why I was frustrated with it. I had a minus 23, and they're up by 24 midway through the third quarter on a bad team and just couldn't put their foot down. I mean, it was just like giving up big plays to South Florida. I mean, what are we doing here? And they won the game easily enough. But on the other hand, I'm less confident in the team itself. I'm more confident that they're going to get in. And the reason I hope
you're right. I don't see it, but I hope you're right. I hope they do get in.
The reason I say that, if you put the odds back up just for a sec, Devin, and this is why. Those top three teams, okay, Georgia's going to get in, as we said, almost no matter what, unless there's just a shock of the century in the next couple of weeks. Georgia will be in even if they were to lose the SEC championship game. Find three more teams that are going to get in on that list. Okay, so whoever wins, if Ohio State beats Michigan State this weekend, whoever wins between Ohio State and Michigan probably gets in if they win the Big Ten. So even if we're going to give them the Big Ten championship, that's two teams, right? Alabama could be the third team if they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, but they're going to be underdogs in that game, and I don't think that's a sure thing by any stretch. And if they lose to Georgia, two-loss Alabama could get in. They could, but are they going to get in over an undefeated Cincinnati?
100%. 110%.
If it comes down to Alabama and Cincinnati, they are 100% picking Alabama.
Even with two losses, you guys believe it?
Doesn't matter. 100%.
So we can see
the thing with Alabama is that A&M is still going to be ranked, and they have a bias towards SEC. It just is what it is.
Who's Alabama's best win? Who's Alabama's best win?
Who cares?
I care.
It's Alabama. You can care all you want. I can care all I want.
The answer is Ole Miss, by the way, which is fine. But their second best win is Florida?
We're not talking about who should get in, Zach. I agree with you.
No,
I
but
100% agree with you.
These guys still have to justify this now.
They don't
And the
have to
other problem you're
justify
going to
anything.
have, well, they do come
won't.
up with stupid ways to justify. The other problem you're going to have, we talk about money and matchups and all that stuff. You let Alabama in that situation, you're going to set up a Georgia-Alabama rematch, or you're going to make Alabama the 3 seed?
Well, in a normal one, yeah, I think they're going to have to. They're going to have to make a Georgia-Alabama rematch. You can't. You even in your world of money, you can't justify moving them to 3. Unless
so
like,
you're going to justify a
overtime
rematch, an immediate rematch? You're going to make Georgia play them twice in a row?
You're coming at me like I'm making the rules. I agree with you. They don't care. You haven't seen this long enough to know they don't care what you think. They don't care what I think. They don't care what Cincinnati thinks. They don't care what anybody thinks. They want money.
Do you think they care what Georgia thinks?
No.
I mean, Georgia's not going to want to play Alabama either. 2 times in a row. Well, I don't know. And then the one thing I'll add to that is that Oregon, which is number 3 right now, is an underdog this week at Utah. And we'll talk about that in a minute. They're actually a 3-point dog in Salt Lake City. I think there's a good chance Oregon loses again. And if Oregon loses, they're absolutely out.
Cincinnati needs Oregon to lose. They need Michigan to lose to Ohio State, which is going to happen. They need Oklahoma to lose again. So they need those 3 things to happen.
They're already number 5 now. They're already number 5.
That changes. That's not going to matter.
I mean,
one loss Oklahoma is getting in before Cincinnati.
I don't think Cincinnati's a lock to get in, but if they win out, I am more confident now than I was a month ago that they get
I hope you're right.
They're getting the help they need, is my point.
All right, I'll one last point before we move on.
Yeah,
this is why I say it can't come down to Alabama and Cincinnati. If you remember the very first year of the college football playoff, they had TCU, Baylor as co-champions. They had Penn State as the Big Ten champion. None of those teams got in, but they let Ohio State come in the 4 seed, and then they ended up winning the national championship. This could be a same scenario for Bama. They lose to Georgia, and they still get in the playoff just based on how they view these other teams. So they set a precedent of this happening where they allow a team like Ohio State, a team like Bama to jump these other teams because they feel like they're one of the best 4 teams. So that's what my argument is, because I think they should just let Cincinnati in and just let it play out. But the way that they've done things in the past, they will allow a Power 5 team, non-champion, get in over a non-Power 5 team. It's just how they conduct business.
The only difference there, Devin, in that analogy is that Ohio State in 2014, the team you're talking about, only had 1 loss.
Yeah.
This team would have 2. I'm not saying it's impossible to let them in, but again, I'm not saying it's a sure thing, but if Cincinnati wins out, which is a big if. Look, they play SMU this week. That's an 8-2 team. SMU is good. I think Cincinnati's 12-point favorite. If Cincinnati can win out, I'm more confident that they get in now than I was a month ago. That's all I'm saying. I don't know, but I am less confident that they can do anything with it, especially if they play Georgia. They're going to get killed. I mean, that's.
I'll tell you one thing the NCAA is also doing. They're also they're getting ready to change the playoff system and make it an 18 playoff, and they're going to say how great it is because we're going to find a way to get
12.
these power 12, 8 or 12, whatever.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I college football. This is why I lose so much interest in college football and have trouble paying attention to it, because it's a farce. It's a money-making scheme. It's whatever you want to call it. It's just not. It's not real football. I mean, they don't do things the right way. I mean, the football on the field is real, and I enjoy watching the kids, and I especially enjoy watching kids that I covered for so long and get their chance to do certain things and all that. But I mean, I can't take this seriously until you get an organization that does things the right way.
Jim, I'm going to say this one time, and you know that
I know
I'm
how
right.
much you love college football.
Every sport is a money-making scheme. Every single one.
Right, but so, I don't deny that. You at least when you talk about real playoffs, you do things the right way. Even look at college basketball. Okay, at least in college basketball, you have 64 teams, and all the conference champions make the playoff. Right. So what are these teams playing for? Okay, if you're like, I don't know, say you're UL. Okay, what is UL playing for? The chance to go to the New Orleans Bowl? I mean,
Sun Belt title. I mean, but that's why I say 12 is the answer. And I think it'll ultimately be 12 because you can then give every Power 5 conference an automatic bid. If we even consider the Big 12 a Power 5 anymore. But if you do, okay, that's 5. And then you can give one automatic spot to the rest of the field. And so you can, a team like UL or a team like Cincinnati or App State or Coastal Carolina, whoever it ends up being, has a chance every single year to say, if we win our conference and go unbeaten, we're going to get in. There is a spot there for Boise State, whoever it is. There is a spot there for us to get in, and we get to prove what we can do. And so if you do 8, I don't think you can do that because then you're looking at 6 auto bids and you only have 2 at large. And right now you have 4 at large, and the SEC is not going to like going down the number of at large. That's why I think you got to go to 12. So I think that's what will happen eventually. But for this year,
it'll be a mess too.
Well, of course, it'll always be a mess. But that's one of the reasons I love college football is it's just a beautiful mess every year. Well, this is the year you got a lot of teams like Cincinnati in. It's a
college
mess.
Basketball is I mean, I think we agree. I think all 3 of us agree with this that college basketball, the way they do their tournament, is the greatest tournament in the world. I mean, as much as I love football, as much as I love baseball, no one does basketball. No one does any sport tournament like the NCAA does basketball. So why can't you pick up a similar model? And I know you can't do 64 teams. I get that. You would have to have a 9-game regular season. I don't want
that. Would be a nightmare.
Yeah, I don't want a 64 team tournament. That would be stupid anyway. I mean, who would you'd have? It'd be absurd. But
they do it in Division 2 and 3 and in FCS. They could, but that's the problem. They don't. The NCAA does not control FBS. The bowls do. The conferences do.
But that works.
So
what they do works. So why can't you base your model off of something that works? And the way they do it is a good way to do it. I mean, it's all.
You answered your own question. You answered your own question.
But you still may. I don't want to. And that's another thing. I don't understand that. Don't you? Wouldn't you make a ton of money with a 32-game playoff or a 16-game playoff? I mean,
but the people who are in
where's
charge
the money
lose money. The bowl commissioners and executives and all those guys.
But you still have to let them be bowl games. I don't care. Call them whatever you want. You can call it the Camellia Bowl or the Poulan Weed Eater Bowl or I don't care what bowl would you call it.
Shreveport's going to host a national quarterfinal, baby.
Yeah, baby, do it.
Let it happen.
I mean, you can have a rotation. They can still do their bowl games the way they want to do them.
And I do think we're headed that way. I do. Okay, let's wrap things up. Let's look ahead at next week. It's week 12 of college football. There just aren't a lot of intriguing games. I'll be blunt here. I mean, the big games are big spreads. LSU plays ULM. A lot of the SEC teams, this is the week where they don't take the week off, but they play their FCS opponent, or they play like Tennessee's playing South Alabama, and then they play some cupcake team. And then even your quote unquote big games like Iowa State, Oklahoma lost a lot of luster because both those teams have faded. Ohio State, Michigan State is a big game. I don't know that anybody thinks Sparty can go to Columbus and win. Wake Forest, Clemson's a big game to win that division of the ACC, but certainly not from a national title perspective. Alabama's got to survive, but I don't think anybody expects Arkansas. The one I look at here, and I mentioned this before, is Utah being a field goal favorite against Oregon.
Utah's played some really good football over the last couple of weeks. So I could see an upset happening. I mean, Utah is a great kind of environment, and Oregon, the way they've been playing over the last month, I mean, really since that Stanford loss, they just haven't been the same team since they went up to beat Ohio State in Columbus earlier this season. So I would not be surprised if Oregon lost this game. This just smells like an upset coming from a mile away, and the Pac-12 might miss the college football playoff again.
That's the thing, is that it wouldn't even be an upset because the smart money is on the same side you're thinking, Devin.
It's so weird that Devin's calling a favorite winning as an upset. That's
and people would believe me. People would call it that because the AP headline would be Utah upsets number 3 Oregon.
Not if I were the editor.
It's not. No, I would take it out too. It's not an upset, but it would certainly shake up the CFP picture. And the really fun one would be number 3 Oregon upsets unranked Utah.
Yeah, right.
Like that would be the really fun headline. So Anyway, it's interesting. It'll be very interesting to see how that line moves between now and Thursday when we do odds and ends. So we hope you join us for that, and we'll talk about that game for sure. All right, looking ahead to the NFL Week 11, and on the flip side, there's a lot of intriguing games here. Cowboys-Chiefs is, of course, a big one in the afternoon. Chiefs are 2-point favorites. Bengals and Raiders, two teams that looked like playoff teams a couple weeks ago, but those, whoever loses that game, their playoff chances are going to be on life support after this week. We talked about Saints-Eagles. The Colts, backs up against the wall. They're playing Buffalo, Packers-Vikings, Steelers-Chargers. Jim, look at this list. Tell me what sticks out to you.
I think the Bengals-Raiders game is probably the most intriguing. I don't know if backs against the wall might be a little stiff because they're with 7 teams now going to the playoffs. I mean, if you mean like getting themselves in a position to have a realistic chance to win in the playoffs, then yeah, maybe. And of course, Cowboys-Chiefs. How are you going to predict the Chiefs? A half an hour ago, I said you can't take too much from what you see in one week and bring it over to the next. But did the Chiefs wake up last night? It's the first time all season that I watched them, and I'm like, wow, it looks like the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be that's going to be a really tough game to handicap and figure out. So I don't know where I'm going to go with that. It certainly won't be one of my big bucks picks. I won't touch that in big bucks. And then Colts and Bills, the Bills have looked kind of off the 2 weeks before yesterday. Colts have had their backs up against the wall. They beat up on some bad football teams. I got a feeling that a lot of people are going to like the Colts here. And I think this is a game where Bills could kind of steamroll them a little bit and make a statement. And then everybody would be talking about how the Bills are back and the best team in the NFL again.
Devin, you have any thoughts here for next week's NFL slate?
Funny enough, I was actually going to say I think the Colts have some value against the Bills, opposite of what Jim was saying.
You're in trouble, Derry.
But I actually
haven't been better in the NFL.
I was about to say I have not been good at NFL, so
no, that's true.
I might just be talking into a cloud. But the Colts, I think they have some value against the Bills. I might pick the Colts in big bucks for next week. We'll see what happens. But I think the Colts have some value against the Bills. I know the Bills are at home, but the Colts have been playing. I know they haven't been playing great teams, but they've been playing some good football as of late, and they're still in the middle of the playoff picture. So I think they can keep it close against the Bills.
All right, this is Odds and Ends, ladies and gentlemen. It's bet.NOLA.com's weekly weekend recap. That's a mouthful. It's our weekend recap on Monday afternoons. Devin Jackson, Jim Derry, and myself are here with you every Monday afternoon to talk about the weekend that was and also the Monday Night Football game, which for tonight is Rams at 49ers. Rams 3.5-point favorites. Your total 50.5 for that one. One more time there. We know you picked the Niners straight up, Jim, right?
I did. I think Niners win tonight, and I think they get themselves. And guys, this is such a wishy-washy type. It's like one big glob of goo, right? I mean, really, both conferences. There have only been a couple of teams that have really stood out so far. To me, that's the Titans and the Packers. Other than that, no one has been outstanding, and I think that will continue tonight. The Niners will beat the Rams straight up, and a lot of drunk Joes and Mabels will lose some money.
Rams 3.5, Niners plus 3.5. Devin, what do you take?
I'm gonna take the Niners plus 3.5. I think the Rams still win the game, though. I think it's a close one. I think Rams find a way to win late in the fourth quarter, though.
I have no strong feelings on it, but just to be contrarian, I'll take Rams minus 3.5. How's that? I did not play this game. I probably will not play this game. But I'm interested to see, OBJ, how he fits in, how much they use him. My guess is they only use him 15 to 20 snaps tonight. He doesn't get a full slate, but we shall see. It'll be interesting. Well, hey, check us out tomorrow afternoon for Fantasy Roundup, myself and Spencer Urquhart. And on Thursday, it is At the Book. We will be back with you. James Carville for Cashing In with Carville will make his picks. And then, Jim, you've got Datitude coming on Wednesday and Friday. And be sure you listen to that episode today if you want more Saints-Titans talk. This has been Odds and Ends on bet.NOLA.com. It's brought to you by the Caesar Sportsbook, official odds partner of the Times-Picayune and Advocate. For our producer, Devin Jackson, and Jim Derry, I'm Zach Ewing, and we'll see you next time.